if we're doing it on a large scale, a big enough scale, then will end up being cheaper.
Thank you very much for joining us here on What Canna Radio, where we take pride in bringing a dose of reality to your conversations about hemp. We are very happy to say that today's episode is brought to you by CBD Peer. Please stick around to the end of the show to learn how you can get a 15% discount on their world-class American-made CBD products. My name is Aiden Washness. I'm happy to be your host today, and now enjoy the show. That's something I've always thought about is right now, it happens with all business sectors. You have competition between states, right? But really, we need to be looking at competing on a global level, because if we don't look at that, then we're going to get squashed pretty quickly. But that's a really interesting kind of portrayal. And then also the whole aspect of mentioning the science and technology aspect of it, because hemp really did miss the science and technology boom, right? We have specialized equipment for corn, we have specialized equipment for soybean, we have back knowledge and genetic engineered seeds for each of those species, right? We have all this knowledge base and technology that's been adapted to each specific crop. And with hemp, it's occurring, but it's obviously, it missed that. But however, what I find amazing, so I work with a company called Pure Hemp New York. We have a bunch of different partnerships with different universities in New York State and New England area. The thing that I find amazing is just how quickly the research is occurring, how quickly new papers are coming out, right? What used to take 30 years is now taking 5 years for us to figure out how to work with this plant and how to grow it and how to harvest it and process it and all these aspects. So it's really exciting to see. In some ways, it's great, right? Because we need the industry to grow and mature so that it can actually be successful. But then in some ways, it's also kind of challenging for people that aren't necessarily not capable, that aren't prepared to go at the speeds that it's growing at, because a lot of people are getting left behind, as we're seeing primarily in the cannabinoid industry. That's more because it's just oversaturated in general. It's interesting because while we sit here and see fiber as kind of the future, and I know lots of other people in the industry that see fiber as the future, there's still, the perceptions around it are still focused on cannabinoids. They're still maybe focused a little bit in grain markets, right? Because people see Canada and how big Canada is in processing grain, but less is focused on the fiber. But again, that is, it's the cheapest thing to grow right now. Yes, you definitely need to have the hundreds of acres potentially in order to actually really have a market viable product, right? Because you need to produce enough biomass, because 10 cents a pound only goes so far if you're producing an acre, right? But it's definitely, it's just fascinating to see this slow progression that's taking place, but it's speeding up for sure as people are getting worried about cannabinoids and don't want to go into that as much. But not that we necessarily always are the best at predictions, but since you really do have your finger on the pulse of the fiber industry, how long do you think it will take before we can say the United States has a hemp fiber industry? We can point at all the points in the supply chain to the market, or would you say it's already in existence?
Well, it is starting. Basically, 2019 was really, I would say, on a national level, was the first year that the federal government legalized hemp and people began to grow it. Of course, a lot of farmers went for what I consider the low-hanging fruit, growing it for the flowers and believing they could make a lot of money in the cannabinoid sector, CBD. And unfortunately, the market got oversaturated. Way too much was grown, and the farmers, were left not being able to sell all of it. But that's kind of normal supply and demand sorts of problems. You don't need so much acreage of cannabis grown to supply the whole market for flower. For example, if somebody had a backyard, they could grow one plant, and if they got a pound of marijuana or CBD out of it, that can potentially last them a whole year. Even if they're a heavy smoker, that's quite a bit. So, if you figure if you're growing multiple acres, you can produce quite a bit out of it. Now, getting back to what you were asking, what has to happen for this to get going and how long it will take. So most people went for the CBD, and now they're realizing the market for that kind of dropped out because there's an oversupply. So a lot of people are now looking for other things to do. So they're looking into the grain markets and certainly the fiber markets. there was only a tiny little bit in 2019 grown for fiber, but in 2020, I would say there's maybe half a dozen groups of people that are now trying to grow it for fiber. But along with that, you have to have that infrastructure. So it's not enough just to grow it. You have to have somebody who can do the decortication of it and or other processes to it, whether it's grind it up or turn it into charcoal or um, reduce the fiber size, things like that, in order to have a market for it. And then even beyond that, just to get from the plant to a yarn, there's a number of machines and couple of industries there that need to happen. Little by little, it's happening, and it is going to happen. On my end, for years, I've been importing the hemp fabric from China. They've been completely and totally the leader in hemp fabric. But even then, hemp fabric is still a niche market, even in China, even in America. It's not a huge thing, but that's entirely because of the cost of it. It's more money. And the reason that it's more money is one, there's the economy of scale that's involved. And for example, cotton is grown, there's probably more than 1 million times more cotton grown in the world than there is hemp for fiber. So you get that economy of scale, and that allows cotton to be a lot less in every aspect, whether it's growing it, processing it, turning it into new yarn, turning it into a fabric. Two, cotton is also a subsidized crop. So the government basically will pay farmers once the crop goes below a particular selling price. And which for a farmer, if you're guaranteed a certain price for your crop, you might as well grow as much as you can, as you know you're going to get it. And therefore, there's a lot of cotton on the market, therefore the price drops even more. That makes cotton fairly cheap to do it. Now, also, we mentioned cotton has had years of refinement where they get a lot of cotton fiber per acre. Plus, every little bit of cotton, they're all genetically identical to one another. So cotton grown in California in various fields is going to be practically identical to cotton grown in Texas and other parts of the country. And that uniformity really helps. With hemp, we don't yet have that uniformity right there, especially in fiber length and size. So that's all kind of got to get into place. But here's the thing, you get more fiber per acre from hemp, than you do from cotton. And if we start applying this technology to it, we're going to get a lot more fiber per acre. You can grow a lot more and grow in different areas of the country. So we're going to start getting that down. What I've done, as I mentioned, we've been buying it from China, but this is the first year I'm actually starting to make some fabric in the United States. And that is, we're knitting and weaving the fabric here, although I still need to buy the yarn from China because we don't have the yarn supply here yet. But that's the first step, or first couple of steps, knitting it here and doing the dyeing or finishing here as well. But getting that into place here opens the door to a market, a supply of yarn. Therefore, the person who decides they want to start making the yarn will have a market that they can get into versus trying to do it blindly and hoping someone's going to be able to take it. They know they have someone who can buy it for them. So to get back to your original point, how long will it take? I figure probably for textiles and other fiber things, within about 5 years, we'll probably start seeing something. And then there's the entire non-wovens market, where we can use hemp for things like building materials and composites. Hemp is a substitute for other fibers that are out there. And we're seeing a lot of companies are looking for natural alternatives to synthetic fibers. They want things that are going to be more biodegradable, better for the environment. And once, hemp gets down to that price where it's competitive, a lot of them are going to start switching over, and the volume for that is enormous. We would have to start growing thousands and thousands of acres in order to fulfill those markets. So when we hit that, a lot of doors are going to start opening for it.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the really interesting point of starting with the product and then working back versus trying to get starting with the plant growing and then trying to build out a supply chain, even though you don't know where that supply chain is going to go. Because I think that's something that a lot of people kind of have misconceptions of with fiber, is that, oh, you can just take it off the field, decorticate it, and turn it into any products you want. But there's like potentially hundreds of steps after you take decortication to the end product, right? Depending on if you're making it into plastics, or even if you're just making it into yarn, right? You have to degum it, comb it, and then even further steps from there to actually to spin it into yarn, right? And so there's
It's funny, yeah, because I get almost every week I get calls from farmers that grew hemp for CBD, and they have leftover stocks, and they're like, hey, can you do anything with this? And you turn it into fabric. And the first problem is it's usually located really far away. You don't want to have to ship that raw material very far. It's got to be close by. And then also, if you really want to make textiles, you have to actually grow the hemp for fiber purposes, to get the right quality fiber. Uh, Hemp stock left over from a grain or flour production is going to be a lot less of a quality or poor quality. And it would have to have different, you might be able to get insulation out of that, but still, you got to be able to process it near to where it was grown.
Absolutely, yeah. No, you got before you ship it, you got to at least get it down to a point where it's refined product that you're basically shipping no dead weight, right? Because any extra weight shipped across the country or even to another country in the world, it just adds extra cost. And actually, on the note of growing it, right, but not necessarily having a place to process it, just for my own learning purposes, I worked with a farmer. I didn't grow this year because I decided that I needed to put all my attention into getting processing up and running. But I worked with a farmer, and we grew 15 acres, 2 years of fiber. And we got it from Canada, and it was fascinating to see, as you said, like the variability with just like, I mean, the one plant in one part of a field to another part of a field could be completely different heights, and I'm sure there was also aspects of just how well the nutrients was taken care of on the soil, or how we grew it and all that kind of stuff. But all the steps that variability within the fibers, but then also, as you said, like getting it harvested, making it prepared specifically for what the end use is going to be, versus just growing any random fiber, and how long you're going to ret it for, whether you're going to round bale it, whether you're going to put it into a square bale. There's just all these different considerations to make. But it's fascinating to see kind of getting those processing pieces in place. And I know some small scale processors that bring in decorticators or whatever, but going further from that step, it takes quite a bit of steps. But so on these notes, why was it that you chose to with CannaGrove to make hemp board versus going with hemp textiles or that kind of stuff?
Well, there were two reasons. One, with the hemp board, since the very beginning of me getting into this, I wanted to do something environmental, and I felt saving trees was something would be very environmental. I've always had a soft spot for trees, forests, and things like that. The idea of being able to get a substitute for wood products, really kind of hit home and really felt like something good to do. Plus, early on, probably within the first year that I was doing hemp, I'd seen a prototype. It wasn't my idea. It wasn't my original idea to make particle board or substitute wood products from hemp. That idea has been around for a while. So I knew it could be done. It was just a matter of taking it from the laboratory and turning it into a viable business. Also, the idea, I felt that I could probably make the boards without having to decorticate the plant, meaning being able to use the whole stalks in order to do this. And I have proven that in the lab. I still got to refine it on a larger production scale. But it looks like it's able to be done. And I figured if I can do that, then I could use leftover grain or flour crops. And also, if we don't have to do the decortication, that removes an entire step. We can make the boards for a lot less. When I actually do the math on everything, if you have a hemp growing, within about 20 miles of a factory, and you're basically growing the hemp for fiber, buying it, and then turning it into boards, you're going to be cost competitive with regular wood boards that are out there. So it seemed like a really good idea to get into that. So those are the main reasons that I chose.
Gotcha.
And then with the textile, well, I've been selling textiles for years. So I have a demand already, and I work out of LA, which has a textile industry. So it just seemed like a natural fit. I could start getting that going as well.
Gotcha. Very cool. Yeah, the hemp board is definitely an interesting thing because it's like hempcrete is a really great material, and that's definitely going to change some things going forward. But it's going to take a bit longer to kind of get to that point. And then like composites and such are going to take a little bit longer to really build out. But the hemp board itself, I mean, yeah, being able to remove the step of decortication is quite a phenomenal thing to be able to do because you don't have to hand feed or figure out an automated supply chain and just all the other steps that go into that. While more clinical research is needed before we can make any medical claims, CBD has shown to greatly reduce inflammation, which can assist with ailments such as arthritis, chronic pain, and even anxiety. However, with so many CBD brands out there, it can be hard to distinguish which brands can offer top quality products while remaining affordable. Well, thanks to today's sponsor, CBD Peer, we can bring you just that. With decades of experience in the supplement industry, CBD Peer's team is offering What Canna Radio listeners a 15% discount to their American-made, high-quality, and yet affordable products. In fact, they are so confident you will love their products that they are offering a 90-day money-back guarantee. Just use the discount code WCD at checkout or click on the link in the description to get your 15% discount. We hope you enjoy their products just as much as we do. And now back to the show. Now, how does the CannaBoard compare to like a wood-based particle board in terms of like strength characteristics or even in like environmental factors?
All right, well, great question. Well, first, environment, it's obvious you're making a product from hemp, an annual plant, rather than a wood, so a tree. And, you've heard that term, 1 acre of hemp is equal to 4 acres of trees. But it's a little more nuanced than that. You have to realize that you can't just, with hemp, you can plant it every year and harvest it every year in a certain amount of fiber per acre. With a tree, you have to wait in a bare minimum. If you plant that tree, you're going to wait a bare minimum of 30 years before you're going to be able to harvest that. And that's a fast growing tree like a pine tree. What's normally happened in the world is people just go out and they harvest existing trees, an existing forest. That forest might be hundreds of years old. And at that point, you don't have to invest any time growing it or any effort growing it. So it's very easy to just take something from nature and turn it into wood. So that's made wood, for the most part, up until more modern times, fairly easy to use. But we are running out of trees. There aren't very many old growth forests left. Trying to have a tree farm and wait 30 years just isn't economical for most people. You just cannot do that. So hemp is a very good substitute to use it. Plus, you're creating jobs for farmers and associated industries around growing and harvesting it. So that's number one, the environmental factor. Number two is with hemp, if you actually look at hemp herd, which is the inner woody part of the hemp stalk, you have, it's actually almost like balsa wood. It's very light and actually kind of soft. So we actually take it and convert it into a board. We actually get at the same strength. We get a board that's lighter than wood, and at the same weight, we get a board that's stronger than wood. These are referred to as engineered wood products. You can make them at different densities. So you can't just say, oh, this is always going to be stronger, because you can have a very high density wood and a low density hemp one. So you have to compare it in terms of densities that you make it at. So we're getting something stronger. Number two, hemp is also very absorbent. The fibers are hollow. So when you need to add things to it, whether you're going to add a fire retardant or a water repellent, it tends to really absorb those chemicals, and it tends to become very fire retardant or very water repellent. So it works incredibly well in that regard too. And let me think, there's one other thing that we had with it. Also, we tend to get the hemp boards that tend to be tougher, and ultimately, mainly, if we're doing it on a large scale, a big enough scale, the hemp will end up being cheaper because cost of wood continues to rise, where the hemp's going to continue to drop over the years, and where when you're doing particle board currently with wood, that factory has to be located near a forest, near where they have the source of the hemp. Whereas if you're doing hemp board, we're going to be able to locate that all over the world in areas where all they have to do is farm. So ultimately, you'll have less transportation costs to get it to the ultimate destination, and would also work well for countries that do not have forests. That maybe are flat, more deserty, where they can have agriculture, but not any land to actually grow a lot of trees.
Thank you very much for joining us here on What Canna Radio, where we bring a dose of reality to your conversations about hemp every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. If you enjoyed what you heard, please smash that like button below for our YouTube overlords, and if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel so you can be the first to know the secrets we reveal. If you need another dose of reality right this moment, check out the video up here, or if you want to see what YouTube has to offer you, check out the videos over here or down below. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a mind-expanding day.